action results from Virginia Governor Youngkin's issuing an executive order earlier this year, asking elections officials to illegally remove eligible people from the voting rolls, challenging his own naturalized and nationally born citizens of his state. Regardless of the Supreme Court's ruling today, those 1,600 impacted Virginians and every other Virginian has the opportunity for same-day registration in Virginia and the ability to cast their ballot on November 5th. This emergency action of the Supreme Court continues to sow huge confusion for the Virginia electorate, but not just Virginia, for states across the nation who have their eyes on these actions. These ongoing voter suppression lawsuits create confusion, especially with these last-minute changes to voting laws, and they often, more often than not, impact marginalized groups like African Americans and Hispanics, even people with disabilities who struggle to meet many of these new requirements. These shifts put strains on local election offices, causing delays and mistakes and reduced services. Our elections are built on a system of checks and balances, and they are to ensure that only eligible Americans are able to register to vote. That's what we do, including registration requirements, state mandate IDs, and verification checks. But this is the same court that overturned Roe v. Wade, taking away other freedoms. But we at NAACP and our advocates in this work will continue to fight here in Virginia, as well as across the nation, to ensure that every eligible voter can vote and that that vote is counted.
Thank you so much, Stephanie. We'll now turn it over to our president of the Virginia State Conference of the NAACP, Coy Bailey. President Bailey, you have the floor.
Thank you, Alicia, and good afternoon to all. You know, as we consider this egregious action from the Supreme Court that was actually instigated by the egregious actions of our governor, here in the Commonwealth of Virginia, we recognize that what is happening is that we are using, or they are using, old tools in a new environment. And what I mean by that is that for the 100 years between the end of the Civil War, 1865, and the passing of the Voting Rights Act in 1965, those who would attempt to keep people of color, specifically Black people, from voting, used a variety of tools to keep us from exercising that precious right. They started with keeping us from registering to vote. After we figured out, working within the system, how to do that, they began a series of suppression activities that continues into today. And that's how we got here today. It makes me even more conscious that the civil rights era is not a historical event. It is a continuous event. What has occurred in the Commonwealth of Virginia over the past few years, just walking through the history, we began to note about 2 years ago of a series of activities that were taking place that were absolutely intended to suppress people's ability to vote. We had large numbers of voters who would mysteriously drop from the voting rolls. And when notified, the NAACP went to work. And in a couple of those occasions, we were able to get the administration to reinstate those erroneously dropped voters to the voting rolls. Here recently, we've actually had one of our localities have 2 of the members of the Board of Elections preeminently, before we have even had the completion of our election period, state that they would not certify the voting results in their particular county based upon baseless conspiracy theories. And then, of course, we have Executive Order 35 issued by our governor, and at the beginning or middle of August, excuse me, not coincidentally, just before the 90-day quiet period that is federally mandated. But we have been prepared to fight back against these suppression activities. We have been collaborating very strongly here at the Virginia State Conference with Ms. Owens at our national office, and the variety of allies and partners within the Commonwealth of Virginia to systematically put in place ideas and preventions that would allow all people who have the right to vote to actually vote. We've been in continuous collaboration and education types of activities with our local branches throughout the 133 different localities within the Commonwealth, so they have the knowledge also and that they are very aware. I want to give an example of the chaos that this particular action has taken. Yesterday, I had a conversation with a member of the Board of Elections in my own locality, Prince William County. He told me that chaos is ensuing within Prince William. There are about 100 of those 1,600 affected people who live within my county. Yes, as Ms. Owens stated previously, there are fixes. I'll use the term cure, even though that's not the correct term for this particular activity, for people to restore their ability to vote so that they can vote. But part of that on the same day registration means that they will actually present a provisional ballot as opposed to the way that they had intended to vote. Furthering that chaos, because these people expected, rightfully so, that they would have the ability to vote, some of the communications that they may have been sent to them, they haven't seen. And so they are going to be very surprised when they show up to vote, either early or the day of election, that their name has been dropped. And lastly, we see very little mitigation for those who voted early and again are not aware of those communications. These efforts are characteristic of the voter suppression activities that this administration in the Commonwealth of Virginia have taken. I will tell you that this administration absolutely understands and knows that many, if not most, of those who are negatively impacted are in fact legally naturalized citizens, and in some cases, natural-born citizens. But in partnership, again, with our national office and those organizations who believe, as we do, that voting is a civil right and a God-given right, we will continue to fight as hard as we can for the equities that all of our constituents deserve. So thank you all very much.
Thank you, President Bailey. Really appreciate the important background there, as we know this is not an isolated issue. I'm now going to turn it over to our Virginia State Mobilization Director, Stephen MillerPitts. Stephen?
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Alicia. Good afternoon, everybody. And so we've heard a robust conversation about the unfortunate determinations of our Supreme Court and the actions of our governor and the administration in Virginia. But luckily for us, we knew that something was coming, right? They don't call it October surprise for nothing. Unfortunately, we've been prepared. We've been doing this work since early summer, engaging, educating and mobilizing our voters, our robust volunteer base, multiple generations of individuals that are excited about the opportunity to cast their votes at the ballot. And so some of the things that we've been able to do is build a robust volunteer base, and go ahead and hold activations where we do text banking, phone banking, canvassing. Last night we had a well-attended text banking where we were able to text about 15,000 Virginia voters, right? So when we look at the number, 1,600 individuals, there's so many more that we do need to reach to get to the ballots, but we got to make sure that we take care of everybody. So it's important to let everybody know about same-day voter registration and your opportunity to rectify the situation, because they think you won't, right? They think when they swing once, you'll stay down for the count. But I'll let you know that all of our civil rights and civil liberties are on the ballot box this election cycle. So it's important that everybody voices their opinion on who and how we should be governed as a country, not only a country, but the congressional races and some of the down ballot races that we have on the ballot. So it's our position in the role that I do, just to mobilize, to continue on the activations. We have a text and phone bank tonight. We're going to be doing canvassing. Early voting ends on Saturday, but you can still cash a provisional ballot on election day. You might just have to stand in line a little longer, right, and work through the process, but your vote will be counted. And we will be there on the ground in the community with our partners, making sure that everything goes the way it is supposed to go on election day. So fret not to this news. We knew something was coming. This is the last ditch effort to subvert the power and the voices of the people. But lo and behold, the NAACP was prepared for all the tactics because there's nothing new under the sun. So we knew it was coming. And the good thing is you can't teach an old dog new tricks. So we knew all the tricks of the trade. And so it's not a time to be appalled, but to get on the field and control the ball. And the ball is our ballot. So please join us in activating, getting to the individuals that have been affected, but not only them, getting to those that still need to go cast their ballot so that an overwhelming response is felt on November 5th.
Thank you so much, Stephen. Really appreciate all of the work that our state conference and you and your team are doing on the ground. We are going to move to open up for questions. If you have any questions, please feel free to drop them in the chat along with your name and outlet that you are reporting from, and we will answer them in the order that they are received. If you're having trouble finding the chat, you can also feel free to use the raise hand function and we will unmute you. Okay, looks like we have a question from Lauren Burke at Black Virginia News. Does anyone know how many of the 1,600 are legal voters? I'm going to kick this over to our Office of General Counsel, Stephanie or Anthony, if you would like to respond to this question.
I will say that we do not know the exact number, but we are aware from people who have contacted us that there are a number of people who are naturalized citizens, meaning that they were born someplace else, but have lived in this country legally, have taken every step necessary to become a legal citizen and lawfully registered to vote, who were swept up and taken off the rolls. We also know that there are people who are natural born citizens, meaning that they were born in the United States, have every right to register to vote, in fact, did legally and lawfully register to vote, and they were still removed by this purge effort, chasing this myth about people voting who shouldn't. So we can't tell you the exact number, but we do know that they exist. And I think even more to the point, the people and the officials who are conducting this purge or who conducted this purge, they also know that they have taken legal and lawful American citizens off the voting rolls and that they should not have done so. They are not putting them back on. And therefore, it is incumbent upon every person not who has been removed to re-register. It's also, I think, important that everyone out there who thought my vote doesn't count, this really doesn't matter, to know, obviously it matters. Obviously, every vote counts. If you are outraged by what has been done, you too have the opportunity to register to vote and to cast a ballot, either in early voting, which ends this Friday, or on Tuesday of next week.
Thank you so much, Anthony. We're now going to move on to Beatrice Peterson. Beatrice, I'm going to allow you to talk.
Hi, Beatrice Peterson from ABC News. I'm just curious, given that Alabama and Virginia have had voter removal lawsuits in recent weeks, as well as this week, do you guys see this as a part of a larger strategy? And my second question is around the 1,600 people who were removed from the rolls. There were believed to be additional people after the first injunction was placed in the lower courts. There was a belief that there was several additional people who were a part of the daily purge. I was wondering if you guys had any indication or any numbers of if there were additional voters past the initial 1,600 who may have been purged from the voter rolls in the last week.
Again, going to kick that over to our Office of General Counsel, Stephanie or Anthony, if you would like to respond to that question.
I will answer the first question, and I'll turn the second one over to Anthony to answer the second. Yes, we do think this is part of an overall strategy. It is not a coincidence that we're seeing this all across the country, and we are seeing this at many different levels. We're seeing all manner of attempts to suppress the vote through voter purges, through making it much more difficult to cast an absentee ballot with unnecessary technicalities, more restrictive voter ID laws. We see that this is happening all across the country. And as I said, it's not a coincidence. If this were a coincidence, we'd also see measures that if it was accidental, a lot of these things would not hit particularly the minority community so hard. These are targeted. There's an attempt to both suppress the vote, to make it harder for people to vote, but also to create a narrative that the voting system can't be trusted. And then on top of that, to discourage people, to make voters feel like it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter that that their vote is not going to be counted. And one of the things that's very important to remind people is that not only do their votes count and their votes matter, but that these kinds of measures are not going to be enough to stop them from voting. Just as we're seeing in Virginia, there's clearly an effort to knock these people off the rolls. But every person who has been removed from the rolls has the power to vote, has the power to get themselves back onto the rolls. But we do know, there's no doubt that this is a concerted effort.
Thank you, Stephanie. Anthony, is there anything you'd like to add to that?
No, I will agree with Stephanie that this is not only a concerted effort for now to try to stop Black and brown people from voting, to make Black and brown people think that someone's going to prevent them from voting, but it's also a narrative to set up for, I would imagine, post-election challenges, and for people to say, I didn't really lose. It's those people who shouldn't have been voting. That's why the election results were the way they were. All right. So we are clear. The idea of people who are not legal citizens voting is an absolute myth. It is not true. This is being designed, and this has been a theme that has been expressed now for a later narrative to try to undermine democracy, undermine faith in the democratic process. So the important thing for, I'd say for all voters to remember is that we have a very safe, a very effective process. Those who are trying so desperately to convince you that it's not safe, it's because they know it is, because they know it works, and that's why they're trying to undermine it.
Thanks so much, Anthony. And I believe that President Bailey had referenced the exact number in his remarks earlier. President Bailey, if you just wanted to reiterate what you had mentioned earlier.
Sure, thank you. Based upon my conversation with members of the Board of Elections, the number as of about midday yesterday was actually 1610. And Beatrice, to another part of your question about, the demographics, from a racial standpoint, a citizenship standpoint, is very difficult for us to get to at this point, although that data will soon be made available to us. Conversations with one of our partners revealed that even though the administration was directed to give those names of those affected to the complainants in the various lawsuits, that information did not come in until late last week, early this week. And so as they look at that data, then they are determining the demographics. And so that's why we don't have that information yet. But again, you're correct. It's been a daily purge that had been a monthly purge. And that number as of yesterday was 1,610, and it has been growing.
Thank you, President Bailey. We'll now move on to Michael O'Connor. Michael, if you could come off mute and let us know the outlet that you're reporting for.
Hi, my name is Michael O'Connor. I report with the Dogwood. I had a follow-up question for President Bailey, and I just wanted to hear more about the impact to Prince William County. Could you just talk more about what you're seeing in Prince William, which is partly in the 7th Congressional District, where there is a very close election happening right now for Congress between Vindman and Anderson. And just, are you worried about the impact, the chaos that you've been describing, that will have on that race?
Sure, Michael. So, a couple of aspects to that question. As you may know, Prince William, like many other locales within the Commonwealth who have early voting and specifically Sunday voting, has had turnout in record numbers as compared to previous years. And so one of the concerns is that some of those affected, even the 100 that have been already identified in Prince William, or those who may now be subjected to having their names removed now that the Supreme Court has made this decision, will have a negative impact on their ability to vote here. The Board of Elections here, again, Mr. O'Connor and others, recognize that in the way that the Commonwealth of Virginia does business, there are 3 members to the Board of Elections for each locality, the 133, and the majority of them, that's 2 in this case, will always be in the party of the administration. So, frank talk, in Prince William County, 2 of the members of the Board of Elections are not as concerned as 1 member of the Board of Elections. And especially as you consider, again, Mr. O'Connor, that yes, Prince William is actually in the voting epicenter of Congressional District 7 from a standpoint of where the majority of voters actually reside. We are concerned. But again, we are working in concert with those officials. We have put things in place that Mr. MillerPitts did a very good job of explaining. And our local branch is working with our partners and allies to ensure that people are knowledgeable about what they have to do if they are in fact removed from those roles. And I think that we will be successful, but it's going to be chaotic and stressful next 6 days as we do that work.
Thank you.
Thank you, President Bailey. We're going to move on to Cheyenne Daniels, race and politics reporter for The Hill. Cheyenne has asked, does the NAACP have an estimate of Black voters impacted by this purge? Have they been made aware if they were impacted? And is the NAACP preparing for day of challenges of any sort? And if so, how? Anthony, Stephanie, I'll kick the initial question over to you.
Anthony, you care to take the first part and I'll take the second? Or I can take both.
Yeah, I'll chime in when you're done.
Okay. No, we don't know at this point how many Black voters have been impacted. But we are quite certain that a number have been, but we don't have those numbers yet. As for our preparations for dealing with challenges on Election Day, yes, we are geared up and we are ready. We have more than 150 volunteer lawyers who are staffing a command center, a national command center, and that's in addition to lawyers and other advocates and staff who will be working around the country at our various branches with our state unit or state conferences with our various units. We are partnered with a number of other voting rights advocacy organizations and legal organizations to monitor and immediately respond to not just voter challenges, but any problems that voters encounter. And we are ready at the drop of a hat, if need be, to go to court and protect the rights of voters across the country. So we are very ready for that. And I don't know if Stephanie would like to add anything to that, because I know there's a strong push all across the organization to do this.
What I'll add is that we are also ready with voter support, assistance, and education. There is an enormous amount of mis and disinformation already out, and we know there will be even more on Election Day. And so another defense for voter suppression is a very well educated, informed, and empowered voter on offense. And so we work, as we are doing with our conversation with you media today, to make sure that our voters are informed and they have the information that they need to cast their ballot. Sometimes it's not always about fighting. Sometimes we just have to do our jobs and vote. And so we focus on voter education in that time frame as well.
Thanks, Stephanie. I believe President Bailey has something to add as well.
Yeah, I'd like to jump in on the first part of the question, and it's a very important question. Do we know of any and how many Black voters are affected? My answer is, I know of one family, an immigrant family from Senegal, who is a member of a well-defined and well-organized African diaspora within the Commonwealth of Virginia. And I want to bring that point out for two reasons, okay? Most of the time when we think about people of color, if we're not talking about African Americans or Black voters, we think about Latino, and perhaps sometimes we think about Muslim. But I want to make sure that we recognize and understand that there is a significant African diaspora community within the Commonwealth of Virginia. What that means is naturalized citizens who came from the continent of Africa. And I just want to close on this particular comment by saying, one is too many. Again, as we have emphasized, this administration absolutely knew, based upon their previous actions, that some of the people that would be negatively impacted were in fact legally registered voters, and they don't care.
100%. They don't care. And I think one of the questions was, is this a tactic? It definitely is a tactic. And so that's why we're prepared and we're doing the work, and we won't be swayed by this. We will make the necessary, provide the necessary resources to those that have been affected to make sure that they understand how they can still cast their vote, but also continue to work to get everybody out to the polls, because I believe, and we've seen that this is a showing, a public showing that we control the ballot. So for our low propensity voters that don't usually come out, when they see people being dropped from the rolls, sometimes they have the disposition of, well, I'm not going to go vote because they control it anyway, right? And so that's why the work that we're doing is essentially, and it's very important that we stay the course, and stay with our foot on the gas to continue to engage, educate, and mobilize until the polls close on Tuesday, because we know that the residual effect will affect other voters more than the 1,600 and counting that are currently affected.
Thank you so much, Stephen, and to everyone else who provided thoughtful responses to these important questions. If there are no other questions, we will move to close this call. I'm taking last call for questions. If you have any additional questions, please raise your hand now. Okay, seeing that there are no additional questions, we'll move to close the call. We will be sending around a recording of this call. And again, really appreciate your participation. Know that this came together pretty quickly, but is a very important conversation to be having right now. So we will continue to stay connected and get prepared to vote. Thanks, everyone.